One of the most compelling close encounter cases in history is the case of Corina Saebels. And we have Corina with us today on Dreamland. When this first happened to her a few years ago, Corina and I had extensive correspondence, and she came on the show. In our subscriber section on unknowncountry.com, the original Corina Saebels conversations are still available, and they are incredibly compelling. Now Corina has a new book out called The Collectors, and you can get it through our Amazon store, and you can get it in your bookstores. It is absolutely astonishing. I had said this about it for her. Corina Saebels had an authentic close encounter experience documented by the presence of another witness and medical observation of the after effects. This is one of the most credible and detailed stories of alien abduction ever told, and a must-read for anybody who cares about this strange and powerful human experience, and so it is. I am very proud to welcome Corina Saebels to Dreamland, speaking to us from her home in British Columbia. Welcome to the show, Corina.
Oh, hello, Whitney. How are you?
Well, I'm very fine, and how are you is the better question.
Well, I'm doing well right now, thank you. Apart from a little cold, we're doing fine.
Well, good. Let me ask you now, this book is a much broader picture of your life and your experiences than it's not just about one close encounter, and we'll get to that in a little while, but why don't we talk a little bit more at first about some of your ideas and attitudes. In large type, right at the beginning of the book, is the phrase, "May the collectors never succeed in taking our spirit away." What do you mean by that, Corina?
Well, as you know, Whitley, and you've probably heard from others before, is that this subject, these beings, seem to take, and this is why I called it the collectors, they seem to collect all kinds of things from us, but it's not just on a physical level like our blood and our eggs, the sperm and stuff like that. This also includes your emotional, your spirit, your soul, so to speak, your essence. I remember specifically one incident where I was inside a ship and there was this huge column in the center of this room, and there were all like hundreds of what seemed to be little thin drawers in there. Anyways, to make the long story short, when I asked what was in there, I was told telepathically that it was the essence of man. And that has stayed with me forever because I don't know exactly what they meant by that. Is it our spirit, our soul, our essence, or is it just DNA or whatever? I wasn't sure.
Now, let's explore this a little bit more carefully. Mm-hmm. What exactly did you feel at that moment? Because you must have had some sense of a feeling of what it might have been.
Well, it's strange because I didn't know at first that there was something in there. When I got closer to the column, I had a very, very strong feeling that whatever was in there was extremely important to us. I had to know what was in there. And when I asked, I was first refused. They said, "It is not for you to know at this time." And I said, "Well, you don't know me very well." I replied that one way or another, I was going to figure out what was in there. And as a couple of them were pulling me away, this taller one, who seemed to be a gray but taller than them and had more of a bony structure in the face area, in the head area, he said to me telepathically, "It is the essence of man."
And you don't know whether it was the essence of a man or the essence of some kind of a record of the whole species.
No, I had a feeling this was not just one. This was hundreds, probably thousands, or God knows how many, because there were many, many, many drawers, and this was huge. This wasn't just a small column. This was very, very big.
Because I had the impression in my own close encounter experience that there was some kind of collection taking place.
Absolutely.
I had the feeling at times, Corina, and it was very disturbing, that maybe one of the things that was happening was that they were collecting us, our souls.
Yeah.
Do you have that feeling too?
I have to be honest. There is, yes, it's either our soul or, as he said, our essence, our spirit. There is something definitely that they are collecting, which
something
is not
that
on
is
the physical level.
Yeah, something that is beyond our understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. There is something there like that, but also there's the physical thing. Like on my encounter in December of '85, I was I had sexual material removed from my body.
Yes.
And has that ever happened to you?
Oh, you bet. Several times. My son, they've visited my son over the years and have done similar things that they did to him. My daughter, actually, believe it or not, my daughter's pregnant right now, first grandchild on the way.
Oh, wow.
And this poor young lady now has, I'm telling you, it's been tough because this is twice now that they've come to her. And she's had bleeding the next morning, and they actually, what she said is that she saw them take out the baby, remove the baby. They did something to the baby and then placed it back inside. Now,
where was she in terms of her pregnancy at that point?
Just about, I guess around 3.5, 4 months, something like that.
So it was a well-established pregnancy. That is frightening.
Oh, absolutely. The last time was only a few days ago, and she's now about 5 months pregnant. But they did an ultrasound at Whitley, and, the funny thing is, according to her dates, she should be along, this certain date. But they're saying the baby is way too big and, very, very active. So they're saying, your dates are wrong or something. And she said, no. She says, I know exactly when it was, and this is when my baby should be due.
Well, Corina, I don't talk about it much publicly because I can't. But this isn't the only such case, and I am following the lives of a number of children who have extraordinary people who are connected in some way with this, and it sounds like you're going to have one of these children in your family as well. People talk about the so-called indigo children, but this is nothing like that, believe you me.
No.
These children are most remarkable. That's all I have to say, and I think that if this challenge comes into your family, it is really going to be something on the one hand. On the other hand, I also know a lot of people who have had very similar, what I call touchings of their pregnancies, where the baby's just been a very wonderful, normal child in every respect with no extraordinary and unusual powers, and just a lovely kid, and it's been a fine birth, and everything has been great. And, of course, then we had, back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, that spate of disappearing pregnancies where women would be pregnant for a month or two and then suddenly it would be gone.
I had 2 of those in the 80s myself.
Yeah, you were among those women. And why don't you tell us a little, and folks, we'll get to and explore in detail Corina's close encounter experience that sparked the writing of the book and sort of got her to come out, as it were, in a few minutes. But, as we're basically 2 very close encountered witnesses talking together, and this is something you're not going to hear anywhere else because most people don't know how to ask these questions because they're not on the inside of this thing looking out. So tell us a little bit about those experiences, Corina, and did the babies come to term?
Well, I was first told that I could never have children for different reasons, and I had endometriosis, things like that. So all of a sudden, in the early 80s, I have this first pregnancy, and the doctor says, well, I don't know how this happened, but, here it is, wonderful. At about 3.5 months, I was sleeping one night and suddenly woke up, and there was blood everywhere, and I could not wake up my husband. For some reason, he was out like a light. And to make this, the long story short, they did an ultrasound, found that there was no baby. There was nothing. And I know for sure, Whitley, like I did not lose that baby. There was no fetus anywhere or anything. But I didn't remember, anything about it. It's just one night I'm pregnant, the next morning I'm not. Then after that, I got pregnant again a few months later. And then when I was pregnant, about 3.5 months pregnant, I woke up one night, similar thing. I was kind of hemorrhaging, but no fetus. So they sent me to the emergency, and they said, well, we think you've had a miscarriage. Then they did an ultrasound. They said, oh, wait a minute, there's still a fetus in here, so you must have miscarried a twin. Well, there are no twins on either side of the family for generations and generations behind. We've checked it. So my feeling was something's not quite right about this pregnancy anyways, because from the beginning there were all these strange things happening. My blood work was strange. They had to put me in the hospital for almost 8 months. It was in and out of hospitals. And this baby was extremely large. So he was born about 4.5 weeks premature, my oldest. And when he was born, he was actually 6 pounds 1 ounce, even at 4.5 weeks premature. Then by the time I took him home, he was 5 pounds. And within 6 months, Whitley, this baby was eating so much and was so big, getting so large, I thought, there's something not right. And right from the beginning, he was different. He seemed to have learning disabilities. He was a bit on the aggressive side. There was just no comforting this child. And I'll tell you, he's 25 today, and he's about 6'11", 430 pounds. He's a massive kid.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, but he's always felt detached. Like the other 2 children and I are very, very close, very connected, even on a psychic level, if you might say. And yet this child never wanted to be held close. There was no comforting him. He doesn't have that closeness. You see what I mean? So there was.
Yeah. What's his coloring? What's he? Is he fair or?
This is the strange part. My other 2 children are like me. They've got dark hair and olive complexions, whereas the eldest one was very blonde, is lighter colored, and has blue eyes. And my other 2 have brown eyes.
Well, that's, what's strange about that is that blue eyes, you can't get blue eyes from a brown-eyed parent.
That's right.
And he has blue eyes, and he's nearly 7 feet tall.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that, folks, is not an uncommon situation. I could tell you a lot of stories that are very similar in this respect, and we know, of course, a very dear family in Mexico whose daughter, now in her mid-20s, is probably a hybrid, and she's not massive like that. She's, in fact, very thin and delicate because she is more of connected to the little gray people who are very thin and delicate. But, I think that one of the things that as the world begins to get its mind around the fact they're here and they've been here for years, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to start to face the fact that UFOs are real. The media and the scientists and the politicians and the military. The military already knows it darn well. Then they'll be talking about them flying around, and the one thing they won't talk about is them coming into our bedrooms. But why are they here? They're here for the same reason we would be here if we came from somewhere else. And where they come from, I don't know. They're here for us, because of the intelligent species that is here. And they are doing things to us and with us. They are very involved. And do you feel, obviously, that they are, given what you said earlier, involved still in your life right now?
Well, for us, it's gone from generation to generation, and my experiences started, the first ones I remember was probably about 5 years old, And with my children, it began when they were between 5 and 6 as well. So, definitely they've been involved with us for a very long time.
Do you have any sense of why you?
I don't know. I don't know why us. I think my children have asked me that, why us, Mom? Like, is there anything different about us? I mean, we seem to be regular, normal people, and, I don't have an answer for them. I don't know why us.
I don't know why us either. And I ask this question of every abductee I get on the show. What is your ethnic background? The Saebels, I don't recognize that ethnic background, the name.
Well, the background on my father's side many years ago was Spanish, but I'm French from Belgium. I was born in Brussels, and I guess the name Saebels used to be spelled a different way and then got changed along the way because of the French from Belgium. So,
is that your married name or your?
No, that's my maiden name.
Your maiden name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you have, we did notice one thing interesting, that when we used to collect the names, we collected the names and addresses of many, many abductees who wrote us letters back in the days when there was no email.
Right.
And many of those names were Irish and Celtic names. And
wow.
Yeah, so that was one hint. But, of course, Streeper isn't, although I have a lot of Irish blood on my mother's side of the family. Mm-hmm. And Saebels isn't, and you don't. And so that's probably not the answer. The answer lies somewhere else. And there are people who say that they felt like they were scanned and rejected, and others that feel like, they won't leave us alone. And in my case, they've been back just very rarely since I left upstate New York, and the most recent being in December. But let me ask you, and I think we'll take a little break first before we get into this, the way you feel about being, in a way, a participant, in another way, a victim, and how does that all kind of come together in your emotional life? And we'll be right back. This week, Linda Moulton Howe does not appear in Dreamland. You will find the Linda Moulton Howe report in the 5th position on our Windows Media Player that you may be listening to now, or separately listed in the subscriber section. And it is a very exciting report. We're exploring those symbols that appeared in the sky over Stephenville, Texas. What do they mean? We're talking to Corina Saebels, her new book, The Collectors. Corina is probably one of the best documented close encounter witnesses in the world. And for this reason, reading her book is an absolute must, because it gives you insights that you can't get elsewhere. I think her case is better documented than mine. And except with one difference, and that is that my implant is so demonstrably strange and out of this world that there can't be any question but that something strange is happening to me. But in the next segment, we're going to talk to Corina more about her experience that makes her case so compelling. But before we do that, when we left the air, we were talking a little bit about the emotional, how does she react to these beings? What does she think? Do you feel you're a victim or a participant, or exactly how do you feel?
Well, I have to be honest with you, Whitley. For us, it's been very negative kind of experiences. So at first, I felt very much like a victim. They come whenever they want, take whatever they want. They've never asked our permission. They don't care about our feelings. They don't care if it hurts. They don't care if it affects us emotionally. They're kind of like, almost like, these little robots who just come and do whatever it is they have to do. They do their business and then they go. So they have no emotions. They have no feelings that I could feel at the time anyways when things were going on. And I'll tell you something. It's one thing when it happens to me, but when they started with my children, and I saw my children wake up with holes in their bodies and burns on their bodies, and they're screaming and stuff, that really did it to me. That made me feel, oh my God, how are we going to handle this? Who do we talk to? What do we do? I was a single mother for many years, and I'm still on my own, and I'm thinking, sometimes I don't know how I did it, Whitley. I don't know if it was my faith that brought me through everything, or just my determination that I was not going to quit and I was going to be there for my kids. So, I think bottom line is, I think I lived a lot in fear at different times when things were going on, like in July 31st, 2003, when I had that 1 hour's missing time with a friend. It was, mostly making sure that I'm still going to be around to look after my children. So when the fear started paralyzing me to the point where I couldn't function, I said, that's it. One day I just went, I have to make this fear work for me rather than against me. So I started a support group here for people, which is going very well, by the way. I'm really pleased with it. And
I wish there were more of those, Corina. I get requests for that all the time.
Do you?
Yeah, but there are very few, and I won't send people to groups that aren't self-run. In other words,
right.
Unless it's abductees running the group or someone very rare,
yeah.
like Constance Clear, who died, unfortunately. I don't, because these people have hidden agendas and it's all complicated and some of them work for the government. I just don't want to fool with it. But go ahead.
Right. So, well, that's when I, like I said, started the group, and then I decided that I was going to write a book. I mean, I didn't plan on writing a book ever. I mean, I'm not a writer, so,
Well, you did good. You might not be a writer, but it's beautifully written.
Well, thank you. It was just from my heart, it was just from what we experienced. It was a piece of our life, history sort of thing, and kind of a legacy I want to leave behind for children and other people that are going through the same thing. With me, this phenomenon really affects my sense of my mother instincts. It's like, please don't do this to our children. Stop hurting our children. Stop terrifying them. And, I remember as a kid just being terrified of going to bed at night and saying, please leave the light on. Can you check for monsters under my bed and in my closet? And, going through a night of experiences, and then in the morning having your parents say, oh, it was just a nightmare, or, well, no, honey, it was probably a cat from the, forest in the back. Well, Daddy, the kitty had no ears or fur. You know what I'm saying? Like, kids are having a tough time dealing with these violent intrusions, and nobody's listening to them. They all think, oh, it's nightmares, or it's
exactly. Nobody's listening to them.
Yeah. I mean, be open. Listen to your children. Like, don't fluff them off, for goodness sakes. Listen to them and help them. So.
Now, I had when I was a child, I was intentionally put in the way of this. In other words, I'll give you an example. One time when I was about 11 or 12, the entire family, except for me, picked up, it was the summer, and drove off and went to our country house, leaving me at home in the house in San Antonio alone. And with just my little dog. The poor dog, that dog went through a lot. And there was really no explanation given at all. They just simply said that they were going and that I was staying, and they left. And it was a hot summer night, and the air conditioning was on, and I had accepted this at just at kind of face value because I was a kid and I was being told what to do, and I was doing it. Mm-hmm. When I went to my room, though, I found that the window above the air conditioner was wide open, and this was a window air conditioner, so you couldn't really open that window. It wasn't something that was normally opened at all. It had insulation and stuff around it. And so I called my family in the country house and couldn't get them. The phone didn't answer. So I telephoned the police because obviously somebody had been trying to get into the house. It was perfectly clear, even to a little boy. I was scared, too, believe you me, terrified. Mm-hmm. But here's what then happened. The policeman came. He went into the room. The man was so scared he could barely move. He was terrified beyond words. And he left, silently saying nothing, and his car, with its lights turned off, backed down the driveway. I don't remember anything else until the next morning.
He left you there?
He left me there.
Oh, my God.
They all left me there.
Oh, my God.
And they used to leave me all the time. They would leave me at the country house the same way.
Oh, that's incredible.
However,
you went through that on your own.
Well, exactly. But what were they? Something was they did. I had dear, loving parents. They weren't doing this on purpose.
No, I understand, Whitley. I really do.
And I bring this up because I've been in the situation that your kids were in, of being a child involved in this, and I know how out of control we actually are. Because if if my mom and dad were alive today, and I said to them, "Why did you do this?" I'll bet you they would say, "Well, we never did that. That never happened."
That's right. They have said that on occasion.
But it did.
Yeah.
It certainly did. Now, let's begin to get a little bit into your experience when it was in 2003. That's correct?
Yes, July 31st, 2003.
July 31st, 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you had a really incredible thing happen. Why don't you just tell us the story kind of from the beginning? You're at your house, you're with your friend, you haven't seen each other in a long time. What then happened?
Well, the night before she's supposed to leave, we're sitting at the computer. It's midnight, just before midnight, and we're looking for rentals for her. She was thinking of moving up here. And very suddenly, and I mean out of the blue, she looks up at me and she said, "Let's go stargazing." And
wait, just stop right there. Folks, listen to this. You notice something happened there? She suddenly, out of the blue, says, "Let's go stargazing." This thing was already touching them, just like it touched my parents. That's why I started with the story of my parents and leaving the house like that. This was already something was watching them then and had entered the friend's mind. Go ahead.
So I said to her, listen, I said, it's midnight. I'm really tired. And I said, you're leaving tomorrow. Why don't we do it when you get back here in a couple of weeks? No. She says, let's go tonight. It's so beautiful out tonight. She hadn't even looked out. How did she know? So anyways, I just went, okay, whatever. So we packed up right away and left. It was maybe a minute after midnight. So I'm leaving the apartment building, and I'm thinking, where am I going to go do some stargazing? Like I wasn't sure where there would be a place where there would be no lights or anything. Anyways, I started driving down this road where I'd never been before, and started driving along, and a lot of traffic. And I remember saying to her, there's so much traffic going on. I don't know if we're going to be able to do any stargazing. This road looks very, busy tonight. So no sooner said, I think maybe a minute later, if that, all of a sudden, no cars. And I thought, well, that's strange. It was all this traffic, and all of a sudden it's dead quiet. So there was no moon out that night. By this time, we're way out in the country. There are no street lights, no headlights from cars. There was no lights. I mean, it was just black and a blanket of stars. So I said, okay, well, I'll pull over on the right side of the road right here. So because there had been sightings of bears and cougars in our area recently, I just brought this 1.5 million candlelight with me just to check for the animals. So we park, get out of the vehicle. She's got the binoculars. She's starting to look up right away. I take my light. I check the area. No animals. I turn it off. And right away she says to me, well, the first thing was the air changed. It was very, very hot that July. And all of a sudden there was like this cold air that came down around us and very funny smelling. And I kind of shook myself, and she goes, did you feel that? And I said, yeah. And then all of a sudden, all the coyotes went absolutely crazy in the area. I mean, it was like we were surrounded or something by coyotes. And I said, well, this is really giving me the creeps. And then she said, right away at that moment, she said, wow, she said, there's 3 stars up here formed in triangular formation that are kind of flying around erratically. She says, could that be a satellite or something? I said, no, satellites don't do that. And then she goes, oh, no, just wait a minute. It just changed it to this neon green looking sphere. And I said, what? She said, well, look up. So I looked up, and about, I don't know, I'm not good at feet and stuff like that, but I would say about 250 feet up above us was this green glowing object. And then I panicked. I don't know what happened, but I had this really panicky feeling inside, and I went, something's wrong. And I turned on my lights in front of the car, about 45 feet in front of the vehicle to the left of the side of the road were 5 sets of eyes. And 4 were together. 1 was by himself, and I knew that he was kind of the leader or telling them what to do. And all of a sudden, they turned their heads towards us and started coming, and I went, oh, my God. Because at first, my first reaction was, I think something happens in your brain when you're in fear or something or in terror. Oh, it must be a deer. It must be a bear. But
oh, yeah.
very quickly.
Listen, I'll give you an example of, and they control this. They control what you see of them very much. And I'll give you an example. There was a carpenter working on a house near us when we had our cabin in upstate New York. It was being built by some friends. And this carpenter woke up in the night. He was staying in the house because he wanted to protect his tools because the house had been finished but had not yet been, there were no locks or anything in it, and his tools were all still there. So he was sleeping on the floor of the living room, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and there was this little man standing over him looking at him. He said little man with big eyes. It was a gray, but he knew nothing about any of this, so that's how he described it.
Right.
And the creature turned into a bird of paradise before his eyes.
There you go.
And then just disappeared and blew his mind 6 ways from Sunday. Mm-hmm. And I've seen them turn into owls, and you have owl stories in your book.
Oh, yes.
But anyway, go ahead. At this point, it's a deer, it's not a deer, and you are in terror here.
When the reality checked in, and then I finally realized what they actually were, I started trying to scream. I turned to the right, and I wanted to scream to my friend, get in the car. But at this point, my voice was like a mere whisper. It's almost like the terror was choking me up. And I tried to run back to the car, like to turn around and walk to the door to get into the vehicle. And all of a sudden, it was like everything was in slow motion, and I was in quicksand. And you know those dreams where you're running away, but you're staying in the same spot, and you can't run, and that thing is catching up to you?
Right.
That kind of feeling. And I'm telling you, I was just terrified. And 3 times I tried to grab the door handle from the vehicle, and my hand would slip off, and I would get more and more terrified. I was just beyond I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
And what was happening with your friend at that moment?
I don't know. I don't remember. I was just concentrating on trying to get into the car.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, my hand did grab the handle. I got into the vehicle, and as I'm getting in the vehicle, she's getting in on her side. And we looked at each other. Everything was going crazy, but I couldn't get the car to start. So she says, get us out of here, get us out. And I said, I'm trying, but the car won't start. Eventually, of course, after a few clicks, the car did start, and I just started speeding back into town. All of a sudden, the traffic is going crazy again. And I thought to myself, isn't that strange? Then she yelled at me to stop the vehicle, and I said, to myself, I thought, I can't believe this. She's asking me to stop. I want to get away from here. But she's insistent, and she's screaming. So I pulled over on the side of the road, and I said, what is it? And she said, Corina. She said, we just got here a few minutes ago. She said, I don't believe this. She said, something's wrong. The clock, something's wrong. Anyways, to make the long story short, she was basically saying that we had about an hour and 5 minutes missing time here. And I thought, I got very angry. I said, no, because I didn't want to believe it, of course. I said, that's impossible. I said, there's just something wrong with the watches or something. I said, there's something wrong with that. I said, it's not that. We got back to my place. We're not feeling well. Decided we weren't even going to talk about it. Got up the next morning. I was the first one to wake up. I've got this huge, huge bruise which covers almost my whole chest. And I've got a bruise under my foot, which is a very unusual place to get a bruise, is it not? Like, the bottom of your foot. And I thought, well, that's really strange. I don't remember falling or anything like that. And I had a head pressure from that night that was so bad. It was just incredible. I didn't know if my head was going to implode or explode. Then she gets up, and of course we all had nausea the next day as well. She gets up. She has a bleeding nose that was bleeding quite bad. It wasn't just a little trickle. And then quickly said, well, I'm going to go have a shower before I get ready to go. Maybe it'll stop the bleeding and stuff. And she gets out and she said, there's something really hurting on my back. She said, could you please check for me? I can't see. And I looked at her back and I couldn't believe it, but I could, because I'll tell you, I've had burns like that on my body before, but with me it was a perfect triangle. With her it was a perfect circle.
Right.
Yeah, and it was, you could tell it was like a radiation burn or something. It was quite deep. And I said, you've got to see a doctor as soon as you get back into town. You must see your doctor. Oh, she said, believe me, I will. I feel so sick. I just don't feel right. So my daughter wakes up, who hadn't been with us but was, asleep in her bed. She wakes up and comes out, and she's got a bleeding nose. And I thought, oh, no, to myself, they got to her as well. Because what happened is on our way home, my girlfriend said to me, you have to look out the window, look out your window. And I thought, no, I'm not looking. She said, you have to look out the window. And when I looked out, this thing had followed us all the way to the apartment.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. And it was still out there, except it was lower in the sky. Now, to be quite honest with you, at first we both thought, look, we've imagined something, we had a similar nightmare, or there's a logical explanation.
Telling yourselves anything you could to avoid telling yourselves what happened. Oh, I've been there and done that, Corina.
Exactly. So you understand, we did not want to accept this. Now, what brought it home that it was real and that we didn't have a choice but to understand that something very strange had happened was, number one, without these people knowing, at least nine eyewitnesses contacted Brian Vike,
right,
HBCC UFO, and they told him that they had witnessed this neon green-colored ship up in the sky at a certain area at a certain time of morning.
Right. In fact, I think some of those reports came to him before you did.
That's right.
Yeah, because he was telling me about those reports before you called him, and then suddenly, what happened? How did you get in touch with Brian Vike?
Well, the reports you're talking about, apparently it started in middle of July, late July.
That's right.
Time, and it was about 200 reports. Now, that's a lot of
The thing had been hanging around there for a while.
Oh, yeah. The Okanagan is just a UFO hotspot since about 2003. That's when it started. But, the way that I got in touch with him, I think it was about a month, Whitley. And finally, with this fear paralyzing me like that, I just thought, I have to get in touch with somebody. And somebody had told me about Brian Vike. So since he's up northern BC in my area, I thought I'll contact him. And I called him or emailed him, told him of our story, and I said, have you had anyone else mention anything? And that's when he told me, oh, my, yes. Hundreds of people have called. There's been emails. There's been phone calls. but there were 9 witnesses that actually saw the ship that was above us in the area where we were at the same time of morning. So there was confirmation that something had happened. One of the women mentioned to Brian that she had bought a brand new camera, tried to take a picture of this, her camera wouldn't work. She couldn't get a picture. Now, I know that sometimes these things have affected electrical things, like cars won't start, different things are going on and off. So I wasn't surprised when he told me about that. But then it was all the physical things that were going on. We took pictures of these burns and
Yes, which are in the collectors in her book. And this book, by the way, is just, this is chapter and verse about what it's like to be involved in one of these ongoing incidents in a life of this. We're going to take just a little bit of a break here, and Corina's book is The Collectors, Corina Saebels. Corina, do you have a website?
Yes, I do. It's www.thecollectors.ws, as in Sam. That is my book website, and I also have another website, which is www.geocities.com/OKUFO 2002/contents.html.
And if you didn't get any of that, it's simple to find. Go to unknowncountry.com and go to the Dreamland, and the Corina Saebels episode will have links to these websites. And so don't miss getting involved with this, especially if you are a close encounter witness, because you're talking here to listening to a very warm person who is probably more than willing to talk to you, and I'm hoping she'll come on for our subscribers for a live chat soon as well. We'll be right back. We're back. We're talking to Corina Saebels about her book, The Collectors. Her experience, her close encounter experience, is one of the best documented there ever has been because, first, there were extensive UFO sightings in the area that she did not know about before it happened. And second, it happened to her in the presence of another witness who had physical traces in the form of a burn on her body, serious enough to get medical attention from. So it's a very well-documented case, and it comes in a lifetime of close encounter experiences, a really remarkable, challenging, to say the least, life, as many of us have had. Now, I'm going to shift gears, and we're going to get back to the story of what happened on that night with Corina's friend in just a few minutes, because a lot more happened, and there's a lot more that we have to discuss. But first, let's go to chapter 13 of the book. I want to read something that really jumped out at me. My children find this very amusing, but I find it annoying. And Ann Strieber is here with me, and she's going to chime in about her husband and his life as soon as she hears this. I don't know if it has something to do with being around them or my near-death experience, but for years now, I have affected electrical things. I also can't wear watches for very long because they totally break down. I frequently blow light bulbs as well. The ladies at the grocery store where I shop laugh when they see me coming because I often mess up their cash registers. I've had my computer crash on me in the middle of writing, losing hours of work. Sometimes this problem can even be painful. When vacuuming, I've been zapped by large blue sparks. This even happens when I open certain doors. Talk about being an electrical conductor. Ann, is this familiar to you?
This is so familiar, and not only with you, but from the 500,000 letters I read. I read letters from people who say I can't wear watches, that my TV can't be controlled, or if my TV goes out of control, I just aim my hands at it and it stops. It goes. The picture comes back. I mean, people are always talking about electrical things. People put out street lights. You put out street lights. I've seen it. We once had lunch in Texas with a guy you knew as a kid who you mentioned put out street lights, and he just kind of froze. And he said, "Oh, my God. I do that every morning when I jog. I put out all the street lights one by one."
He lived up the street and was involved in the childhood experiences. Now, Corina, let's get back to what happened on that night. And there's a reason that I brought this. There's always a reason when we're talking on the air that I bring things in. This may not seem to fit right now, but it's going to fit in just a few minutes very, very well. Let's go now back to that night. You've come home. You've been there for now a couple of days. She goes to the doctor. What did the doctor say about her burn?
Well, she went back to the coast and she went to her doctor. And as soon as he looked at it, apparently, I'm going by her words now. The doctor said to me, if I didn't know any better, this looks like a radiation burn, but that's so silly. He says, how would you get a radiation burn? He said, do you know if you leaned up against something or whatever, like how you could have gotten it? And of course she went, no. And he said, well, I really don't know really what this is, so we're going to give you some ointment to put on there, and if you develop a fever or anything else happens, I want you to come back and see me. So that's basically what the doctor said. His first reaction was that it was a radiation burn.
And how was her health after that?
Well, actually, both of us have very long, very thick hair, or at least did. And from that night, both of us started losing an excessive amount of hair, lost a lot of hair.
Which is very similar to the Cash Landrum case in Houston, where the people obviously had radiation exposure. And in your case, it has worried me a lot because the outcomes for them were not good. They later developed cancer. Mm-hmm.
We, not just the loss of hair, we had a lot of nausea. We actually had some vomiting at one point. Both of us lost a big amount of weight, I guess on account of that, and then the fear and stuff. I remember, I was overweight, so I needed to lose weight, but listen, I don't want to lose weight that way ever again. I believe I lost about 55 pounds within 3 months. And
my word.
The medical condition just, to this day, I don't think I've ever really been back to my normal self. But what happened is, for instance, this head pressure got so bad that a few months later, a year later, they did, I can't remember if it's called an ECG or an EEG, on the brain.
It's an EEG.
Okay. So they did that.
Electroencephalogram.
That's
I know
right.
it well. I've had a few.
Okay. So they did that, and all of a sudden come back and tell me, well, we feel that you've had some kind of brain injury. And I said, excuse me? Because apparently I was having these small seizure activity in the brain. And I said, no, you're mistaken. This isn't my test result. This is someone else's. I've never had a problem in my life. And they said, well, no, it does show that there's been some kind of brain injury. Now, that's only since that night. So I don't know what happened, what was done, but I still get the odd head pressure like that. Now, another thing that was strange after that was that the body temperature, normal body temperature is 36.8. Mine
98.6 south of the border, my dear.
Okay, sorry. But to give you an example, my body temperature would sometimes go down to 34.2. And what would happen is my skin would literally start turning a gray-blue color. I would be almost frozen. I couldn't even articulate some words when I was on the phone to the hospital saying, I don't know what's going on with me. I can hardly move and I can hardly talk, and I'm freezing, Then it was potassium levels would crash off and on, and for no reason at all. And then the liver enzymes were up. The white count was up. They just didn't know what the heck was going on with me. But at one point, I think it was December, so a few months after our experience, I ended up actually in the hospital for 7 days. To this day, they can't tell me what was wrong with me. They just know that my blood work was, all over the place. My temperature was not normal, and that I had severe pain in my head. So they kept me in the hospital on intravenous, gave me very strong antibiotics, and gave me painkillers. And then, as things got back to normal a little bit, then they sent me home. But they had no answer for what was going on with me.
Now, so you had, I had, a lot of us have had strange health responses after these experiences as well. So yours were really extreme, and I think that in part it seems to me that it has to do, in some way, the more clear our memories are, it's almost as if we're protected not only mentally but physically from it. Because like at my cabin, when the visitors would show up and people were asleep, even though the people would have vague memories and stuff, like lots of abductees and close encounter witnesses have, they would be fine in the morning. But if they were conscious when the visitors came in and they touched them, they'd have big allergic reactions the next day and have a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And I think the degree to which you were conscious in these experiences maybe made you more vulnerable. I'm just theorizing here. But I want to go back, though, because after this happened, it wasn't long before you began to have some memories of what had happened during that missing time. Is that correct?
No, I've remembered very, very little from what happened during that missing time. Little memories like it would just be a flash of the face right in front of my face and those big black eyes, like that's all I can see really is the big black eyes.
I have that too. And what is that about? I mean, what are they doing? Why do they have to peer at us like that?
I don't know. I wish I knew. Maybe that's their way of hypnotizing us in a way that we're passive when they're trying to
maybe.
I don't know. But I remember like when the kids were really small, I'm kind of going off a little bit, but when the kids were small, like for instance, Nicole had a dream where these black eyes were right in front of her face. That's all she could remember. And then, a day or two later, she's going, Mom, there's something, in my forehead here between my eyes. And she said, it's really bothering me. It hurts. And at first I thought not too much of it because it looked like a little pimple or something. And I said, oh, honey, it's going to go away. And she says, Mom, I keep seeing big black eyes in front of my eyes. I think she was probably about 10 or 11 at the time. And I kept saying, oh, honey, you probably had a nightmare. I didn't want to, say things to her to make her even more scared. So I said, it's probably a nightmare, but you'll be all right, sweetheart. You're here. We're with Mom. Everything's good. All of a sudden, I hear this screaming, and she comes to me and she says, Mom, this thing, she says, just came out of my head. I just popped it out. And it looked like a piece of glass, broken, charred glass, but it looked like selenium. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's a kind of a crystal that looks like glass but is a bit white. And
well, I have seen that. I've seen that from another close encounter witness, in fact.
Now, the weird part is it had kind of like appendages or veins attached to it.
Wow.
I thought, whoa, this is really weird. So
what happened to it?
Well, I put it in a plastic bag, put it away in a drawer, and thought, later I will find out who I can send this to. I want to have this analyzed. And, well, Whitley, at the time, this was, many years ago. You
don't even need to explain. It disappeared.
Well, I put it in a brown envelope. I mailed it away to someone, and they never got it. I never saw it again. These things, I know from long experience, have to be handled very, very carefully because they do have a habit of disappearing. Mm-hmm. If you like, for example, if you're going to ever send one to somebody, you have to do it at overnight FedEx tracking, where they have real serious, FedEx has got a very, very good security system. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's liable to disappear. And they disappear out of people's homes all the time. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah.
Now, let's go on a little bit about with implants. And obviously, I mean, I've got one in my ear that I have never. There's been an attempt to remove it, but it has never been removed. And I know from your book that this has been a big issue in your life too.
Well, I was going to say, where is yours in your ear? Because I did wake up a few years ago with an implant in my ear, and I had witnesses. I showed it to a few people as I got up. We also took a picture of it, a photograph.
Which is in your book, is that correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So I know it's hard, it's difficult to see in photographs, in the book, but believe me, it was there. You couldn't miss it. And we thought, okay, we finally have, that piece of the puzzle that the skeptics want. You know what I mean? Like maybe this.
Oh, they don't care about this. The skeptics, so-called, are not about proof. They establish standards of evidence, and then when we meet those standards, they pretend it never happened, because that's not who they work for. Like people like Philip Klass and these people.
Oh.
Philip Klass was an editor of an aerospace magazine for years, which was famous for getting all kinds of scoops from the Air Force about secret aircraft and stuff. Oh. And where did that come from? I think it came from the fact that he did this on the side, debunking this. Yeah. No matter how much evidence. You could have had a live alien walk into Philip Klass's office, and he would have said it was a balloon.
That's right. That's right.
So that proving it to the skeptics means nothing. But I can see this on page 125 of your book. Mm-hmm. And I also want to say this, the scar of the hole in Chris's back. Chris is your son, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Now, has anyone ever tested his body for an implant anywhere?
No. None of us have been tested for implants.
Okay, because that should be done. And the reason I say this is this. Dr. Roger Lear finds again and again that these little scars mean that skin was taken out and wrapped around an object that has been placed elsewhere in the person's body, and the skin has been wrapped around the object by means we do not understand in order to prevent the body from rejecting the object.
Now, what you're talking about is not the same thing as the scoop mark on my leg, then?
Well, sure it is. It's just, it's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and any scoop mark scar, any unexplained indentation in a person who's had close encounter experiences or even seen a UFO is a sign that somewhere in their body there's an implant.
Mm-hmm. Well, the implant, the picture that you have in the book, the implant was in my right earlobe area.
Yeah, the right-sized object in earlobe?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I can see that. Now, it's gone now, though, isn't it?
Yes. It was removed the next day because we had planned on going to the doctor and having it removed. And you know what I'm going to say. I wake up in the morning and guess what? It's gone. Or it's moved. One or the other. It was no longer there. So I was, my friend was in shock, and he's saying, look, this is ridiculous. Like, this can't just disappear. Felt very angry, very frustrated with this. Now, I have to be honest with you that something took place here. I'm going to move up a little bit. Again, July 2007, for some reason, it seems to be July all the time. We had many eyewitnesses who reported to Brian Vike, apparently, that there were 2 UFOs seen over our big Okanagan Lake one night around 11 p.m. They were seen interacting aggressively towards each other. That's all. The only way people could put it, the eyewitnesses could put it. All of a sudden, one of them goes like diving into our lake. It's got an orange fireball following it. It goes diving into our lake. I know this sounds crazy. Bear with me. Then all of a sudden, this UFO a minute later comes out of the lake, goes back up into space, does an interaction with this other UFO, and then both of them go off into space. Now, this was witnessed by many, many eyewitnesses. Now, what happened the next day, now that night, I didn't know about this at the time, of course, but that night I had a nightmare, quote unquote, about them and being on a ship.
Okay, well, we've come to the point of a break. And we are going to stay right with this. We'll be right back. We're back. We're talking to Corina Saebels, her new book, The Collectors. Don't miss it. You can get it from the unknowncountry.com Amazon store. You can get it from your bookstore. Don't miss it, though, because this is real insight from a genuine close encounter witness into what it is actually like to be involved in this. We were talking about a remarkable incident. Brian Vike, it was on Brian Vike's, it's probably still available on his website, hbccufo.com, and of an apparent battle between two UFOs over Lake Okanagan in British Columbia. And Corina, you were not aware of it, but there was something going on in your mind, nevertheless, at that time. You lived nearby.
Yes.
Go ahead and keep telling us.
I had not heard about anything, of course, because it happened the night that I had this so-called dream, very vivid dream. And the next morning when I woke up, I felt this pain up on the roof of my mouth. It really, really hurt. So I tried to look up. Of course, I couldn't do it myself. I thought, well, I'll go to my parents who live in the next town over and ask my mother to have a look for me. And I had brought my camera for her to take a picture because I knew there was something not right going on. Anyways, when I got there, I just got out of my car, and right above my parents' house, black helicopter. Blacked out windows, black everything. There was not a number, a name, or anything on this helicopter. And it just hovered there. So I finally said, okay, Mom and Dad, and I yelled at them. I said, come out and see this. So they came out and looked. And at that point, I thought, I have my camera with me. So I grabbed my camera, and as I went to take a picture, he took off very quickly. And I mean quickly. I have a picture of it. But it's, it's like a little dot because he went so fast. So my parents said, what the heck was that about? Because they don't know too much about the black helicopters and stuff. So I said, I'll explain it to you later. But I said, Mom, could you please have a look on the inside? So make the long story short, she looks, she goes, oh my God. She says, you look like you've had surgery or a burn or something up there. And I said, well, it really hurts. She says, look, I don't like the looks of this. Please go to the walk-in clinic. So she took a picture of it, a couple of pictures. Then I went to the walk-in clinic. And it was a female doctor, and I said, this is what happened. I woke up like this morning. Could you tell me what this is, please? She says, have you had a surgery up there recently? And I said, no, I haven't. I said, when I woke up this morning, it was just painful. And she said, well, it looks like a burn, but it almost looks like you have a straight line down the middle, which looks, like you've had some kind of surgery or something. She said, well, I'm really not sure what this is, but she says, what I'm going to suggest is that you go to a drugstore, get some kind of mouthwash that has something to numb the pain out. Ask the druggist about it. I said, okay. I said, oh, and while I'm here, I said, there's also something, like I've got some pain behind my left ear area. Could you please check that for me? And she said, oh. She said, you have a red circled area behind your ear, about, the size of a dime or a quarter Canadian. And I said, I don't remember doing anything to my head area. I said, I don't know what that's from, but I said, I know it's painful this morning. So she says, the only thing that I can think of that it might be, and I'm saying might, she says, you might have a rare form of shingles. And she said, if it is that, by tomorrow morning, you'll have a rash all over the left side of your face. Well, the next morning came, and there was no rash. It wasn't shingles. The red dot eventually disappeared. But I thought, I have to medically, have this documented because nobody's going to believe me. So I took a picture. My parents saw it. After all this happened, the next thing we know, there's black helicopters flying up and down the Okanagan Valley. Then I'm standing there, and I hear this very loud sound. And I look up, and there's this huge, huge NATO plane So you know the one with the big, it looks like a flying saucer actually.
That's
on
an
top of it?
AWACS, yes.
Right. So it's flying up and down the Okanagan, buzzes our airport, and then flies down the Okanagan Valley again, and then disappears. So there were many eyewitnesses to military planes, jets. There were black helicopters. There was the NATO plane. There was all this stuff going on. And finally, I think it was Brian Vike who emailed me, and he said, wow, he says, what's going on in your neck of the woods again? And I said, I don't know why. I said, I had a strange night, but I said, I didn't know there was anything going on. And he said, and then he proceeded to tell me, you know, the stuff that had been happening. So it's been a really busy place around here for the last.
Yeah, I should say. Now, I want to get back to that battle.
Mm-hmm.
And to my, in a sense also to my own very different, in some senses very different experience from yours and something else. And I want to ask you a question. A few years ago, there was a crop circle formation. I wouldn't say it's a crop circle, but it was more of a formation of a sort of alien face in this formation in England that could be translated. The formation was made in a certain rather familiar binary code, and it was easily translatable. And part of it was that there is good out there also. And you talk about this apparent battle between these two UFOs, and my own experience tells me this, that some parts of my experience were quite good, quite wonderful, and very sustaining, and things that I would never have wanted to not have in my life, and other parts were really very terrible and associated with an emotionless dynamic, just like the one you were talking about. But the good ones, these same beings that looked very similar, were richly alive and full of emotions and wisdom. And so it was it was like two completely different types of being that looked the same, but that were just profoundly different. And how do you respond to that personally?
Well, interesting that you should talk about this and on this subject, because for us, it's always been very negative and terrifying and painful. So unfortunately, you know, if there are good and bad ones, which I believe there are, because, I mean, let's face it, in us humans, you will find good humans. You will also find very negative and dark human beings. So I'm sure that somewhere on either another planet or another dimension, there must be good alien beings. I've never met them, unfortunately. So, but I do believe
I have to wonder if the right guys had won on that night, if you would have met them.
I don't know. A girlfriend of mine kind of started talking about the same thing, well, I know some people that have had very good experiences with tall blonde beings and so on and so on. And she said some of them said that their good experiences were with these types of grays. And she says, you know what I feel about that? And I said, well, why don't you tell me what you think about it? And she says, I think that sometimes these bad ones that are dealing with you kind of put these screen memories or these feelings in you that they're actually being good, so that, you'll be more receptive when they do come back again. But she said they're all the bad ones. They just make you think they're good. And that, I just went, whoa, wait a minute, because, I've always thought if ever there are beings that are good out there and they come to me, I really want to be, friendly to them and receptive and what have you. I mean, I think it would be wonderful to meet other brothers and sisters from other dimensions, from other worlds. I think it would be awesome.
I've had both good and bad experiences with blondes and with grays and with other beings as well. So, and when I say good and bad, and we're kind of,
I know.
It's hard to say, and here's why it's hard. If you were a cat and you had something wrong with you that you had no conception of, couldn't even begin to understand, any more than, just so far beyond your understanding, you couldn't even be taught what it was. And you're taken to the vet, and you're given maybe an operation and put to sleep and given shots and kept in a miserable cage far from home that you don't understand, you would definitely say that vet was evil.
Yeah.
Of course, you wouldn't know or understand that this has saved your life. And in a sense, we're kind of in the same boat with this, aren't we? Because we don't actually know what this is all about. We can't tell whether it's evil or simply unpleasant. It could even be good for us for all we know.
Well, see, for us, though, Whitley, it's always been, we've never had anything fixed. If anything, we've had nothing but medical problems and pain and this and that.
Well, no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking now about getting back to this issue that we started the program with about the essence of man.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And maybe in the process of collecting that and making that something that will survive if this species does not on this little planet, it's hard for the people who are being used to make that image of man. But at the same time, it is something that is preserving us all in a way that will enable this species to live again in another world should we lose this one.
Well, that is one way of looking at it.
It's just a theory.
Yes.
My point being that because we don't know what's going on, we can't be sure.
That's right. And that, it is unfortunate because it is a big, giant puzzle, and there are many pieces to this puzzle that are missing, and we're trying to put the pieces together. And this is why it's so good to keep bringing in awareness to the public that these things are very real, that they're really happening, and for people that have had experiences to come forward with their stories so that we can begin putting all the information together and understand what we're dealing with, why, and how we're going to deal with it.
Well, exactly. Because we don't have a response to this, and we don't because we have a government that is denying because they can't do anything about it, and it's coming right into our lives in the most intimate possible way, in ways even more intimate than we can actually understand. And they can't, so they're not going to admit to anything that they can't control something so incredibly important to us. The media and the scientists let their egos get in the way, and they won't look at the reality that is there before their faces. The evidence is in. It's over. I mean, we are in contact.
Oh, absolutely. And, it is getting more and more out there. I mean, I don't know if you had it on your TV stations in the United States, but, for the last 2 weeks, we've had Larry King coming on and on the news channel there, and he's been speaking with UFO experts, Dan Friedman, and other people like that. And did you watch it?
Well, yeah, sure. I'm very familiar with that, and we've had some things about that on Dreamland, and also the Stevensville UFO incidents have been heavily covered on this website and on unknowncountry.com and on Dreamland. So, yes, of course, we are familiar with it.
Yeah, so it is getting more and more out there. More and more media people are willing to be open to talking about it, to exploring it. But it's a very slow process. I'm telling you, as from our end, I think that that is imperative that we start having, physicians, lab technicians, counselors, and even preachers that will come forward and help people
exactly
that are going through this.
If we were organized, if human beings, the human species was organized in just the way you just said, we would begin to be able to come to some definite conclusions about what this means to us, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely certain. But instead, because of the government denial, and because, if you look at the intellectuals and the scientists, they really don't want this to be true. And because it disempowers them in a very profound way. And that was summed up to me by an astronaut I was once talking to, Rusty Schweikert, who said, I just don't want I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to think about it because I just don't want the road to Mars to be a well-worn path. And I can understand where they're coming from. That makes a lot of sense to me. And yet at the same time, The importance of this is overriding. Look at your life. Look at your son, your kids, and our lives, and all of us. We need to know, and we need the respect and support of the community, of the whole community.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think your book is going to do a great deal toward helping that, because anybody who picks this very compelling book up cannot come away from it thinking nothing is happening, that it's all in her head, because it isn't. It isn't. It's real. It is happening, folks.
Yeah, and some people think, it only happens to certain people in a certain area of the planet. Well, I got news for them. It could be their neighbors. It could be in their own town. It could be, you could be living in an apartment building, and 3 people in that apartment building are experiencing things but don't know who to go to. They're scared to talk about it. They think people are going to ridicule them, think they're crazy. I got news for people out there. This is happening to very normal, everyday, average people. We're not crazy. We don't have, some kind of mental illness or anything. This is absolutely, totally real on every aspect. You can feel it. You can smell it. You can touch it. When you're having an experience, believe me, it's a lot different than just a dream. You know what is real. You can feel it. You can taste it. You can smell it. It is totally different than a dream.
Oh, yes. It's no dream. Absolutely no dream. And, we're just about to come to our time, the end of our time together. We've got about 2 minutes. And, Corina, is there anything I haven't covered that you would like very much to talk about?
No, I think we've covered pretty well everything. I mean, there are some things that I didn't include in this book, which I've kept to myself. It's almost like not wanting to contaminate the public with some certain things. However, I did include in there a couple of things which I've never heard other abductees talk about, and I'm hoping that I'll get some feedback from people, whether they've had this experience or not.
Can you give us just a quick idea of what one of these things is?
One of the things that happened 2 or 3 times now is that I wake up after a night of some kind of experience and I have pain deep in my sinus cavity. Seems to be something stuck up there. Start blowing my nose, and neon baby blue strings, for lack of a better word, will come out. And when I try and put them away to send to somebody to have them analyzed, they evaporate. They totally disappear. And I've never heard of anyone else mention anything like that.
Well, if anyone has anything like that, you can go to Corina's website and contact her through there, and you can get her web address from the link on Dreamland, or you can always write whitley@streaver.com, and we will forward the email to her. Corina Saebels, I would like to thank you very much for being with us for this wonderful, wonderful experience. Corina's book is The Collectors. You can get it from the unknowncountry.com Amazon store. You can get it from any bookstore. It is a remarkable book. It is well illustrated, and what makes it so remarkable is that this is a person who is really having this happen to them. This is not a dream.
For different reasons, and I had endometriosis, things like that. So all of a sudden, in the early 80s, I have this first pregnancy, and the doctor says, well, I don't know how this happened, but, here it is, wonderful. At about 3.5 months, I was sleeping one night and suddenly woke up, and there was blood everywhere, and I could not wake up my husband. For some reason, he was out like a light. And to make this, the long story short, they did an ultrasound, found that there was no baby. There was nothing. And I know for sure, Whitley, I did not lose that baby. There was no fetus anywhere or anything. But I didn't remember, anything about it. It's just one night I'm pregnant, the next morning I'm not. Then after that, I got pregnant again a few months later. And then when I was pregnant, about 3.5 months pregnant, I woke up one night, similar thing. I was kind of hemorrhaging, but no fetus. So they sent me to the emergency, and they said, well, we think you've had a miscarriage. Then they did an ultrasound. They said, oh, wait a minute, there's still a fetus in here, so you must have miscarried a twin. Well, there are no twins on either side of the family. for generations and generations behind. We've checked it. So my feeling was something's not quite right about this pregnancy anyways, because from the beginning there were all these strange things happening. My blood work was strange. They had to put me in the hospital for almost 8 months. It was in and out of hospitals. And this baby was extremely large. So he was born about 4.5 weeks premature, my oldest. And when he was born, he was actually 6 pounds 1 ounce, even at 4.5 weeks premature. Then by the time I took him home, he was 5 pounds. And within 6 months, Whitley, this baby was eating so much and was so big, getting so large. I thought, there's something not right. And right from the beginning, he was different. He seemed to have learning disabilities. He was a bit on the aggressive side. There was just no comforting this child. And I'll tell you, he's 25 today, and he's about 6'11", 430 pounds. He's a massive kid.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. So, but he's always felt detached. Like the other 2 children and I are very, very close, very connected, even on a psychic level, if you might say. And yet this child never wanted to be held close. There was no comforting him. He doesn't have that closeness. You see what I mean? So there was.
Yeah. What's his coloring? What's he? Is he fair or?
This is the strange part. My other 2 children.
One of the most compelling close encounter cases in history is the case of Corina Saebels. And we have Corina with us today on Dreamland. When this first happened to her a few years ago, Corina and I had extensive correspondence, and she came on the show. In our subscriber section on unknowncountry.com, the original Corina Saebels conversations are still available, and they are incredibly compelling. Now Corina has a new book out called The Collectors, and you can get it through our Amazon store, and you can get it in your bookstores. It is absolutely astonishing. I had said this about it for her. Corina Saebels had an authentic close encounter experience documented by the presence of another witness and medical observation of the after effects. This is one of the most credible and detailed stories of alien abduction ever told, and a must-read for anybody who cares about this strange and powerful human experience, and so it is. I am very proud to welcome Corina Saebels to Dreamland, speaking to us from her home in British Columbia. Welcome to the show, Corina.
Oh, hello, Whitney. How are you?
Well, I'm very fine, and how are you is the better question.
Well, I'm doing well right now, thank you. Apart from a little cold, we're doing fine.
Well, good. Let me ask you now, this book is a much broader picture of your life and your experiences than it's not just about one close encounter, and we'll get to that in a little while, but why don't we talk a little bit more at first about some of your ideas and attitudes. In large type, right at the beginning of the book, is the phrase, "May the collectors never succeed in taking our spirit away." What do you mean by that, Corina?
Well, as you know, Whitley, and you've probably heard from others before, is that this subject, these beings, seem to take, and this is why I called it the collectors, they seem to collect all kinds of things from us, but it's not just on a physical level like our blood and our eggs, the sperm, and stuff like that. This also includes your emotional, your spirit, your soul, so to speak, your essence. I remember specifically one incident where I was inside a ship and there was this huge column in the center of this room, and there were all like hundreds of what seemed to be little thin drawers in there. Anyways, to make I'm telling you, it's been tough because this is twice now that they've come to her. and she's had bleeding the next morning. And they actually, what she said is that she saw them take out the baby, remove the baby. They did something to the baby and then placed it back inside. Now,
where was she in terms of her pregnancy at that point?
Just about, I guess around 3.5, 4 months, something like that.
So it was a well-established pregnancy. That is frightening.
Oh, absolutely. The last time was only a few days ago, and she's now about 5 months pregnant. But they did an ultrasound at Whitley, and, the funny thing is, according to her dates, she should be along, this certain date. But they're saying the baby is way too big and, very, very active. So they're saying, your dates are wrong or something. And she said, no. She says, I know exactly when it was, and this is when my baby should be due.
Well, Corina, I don't talk about it much publicly because I can't. But this isn't the only such case, and I am following the lives of a number of children who have extraordinary people who are connected in some way with this. And it sounds like you're going to have one of these children in your family as well. People talk about the so-called indigo children, but this is nothing like that, believe you me.
No.
These children are most remarkable. That's all I have to say. And I think that if this challenge comes into your family, it is really going to be something on the one hand. On the other hand, I also know a lot of people who have had very similar, what I call touchings of their pregnancies, where the baby's just been a very wonderful, normal child in every respect with no extraordinary and unusual powers, and just a lovely kid, and it's been a fine birth, and everything has been great. And, of course, then we had back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, that spate of disappearing pregnancies where women would be pregnant for a month or two and then suddenly it would be gone.
I had 2 of those in the 80s myself.
Yeah, you were among those women. And why don't you tell us a little, and folks, we'll get to and explore in detail Corina's close encounter experience that sparked the writing of the book and sort of got her to come out, as it were, in a few minutes. But, as we're basically 2 very close encountered witnesses talking together, and this is something you're not going to hear anywhere else because most people don't know how to ask these questions because they're not inside. They're not on the inside of this thing looking out. So tell us a little bit about those experiences, Corina. And did the babies come to term?
Well, I was first told that I could never have children. Long story short, when I asked what was in there, I was told telepathically that it was the essence of man. And that has stayed with me forever because I don't know exactly what they meant by that. Is it our spirit, our soul, our essence, or is it, is it just DNA or whatever? I wasn't sure.
Now, let's explore this a little bit more carefully. What exactly did you feel at that moment? Because you must have had some sense of a feeling of what it might have been.
Well, it's strange because I didn't know at first that there was something in there. When I got closer to the column, I had a very, very strong feeling that whatever was in there was extremely important to us. I had to know what was in there. And when I asked, I was first refused. They said, it is not for you to know at this time. And I said, well, you don't know me very well. I replied that one way or another, I was going to figure out what was in there. And as a couple of them were pulling me away, this taller one, who seemed to be a gray but taller than them and had more of a bony structure in the face area, in the head area, he said to me telepathically, it is the essence of man.
And you don't know whether it was the essence of a man or the essence of some kind of a record of the whole species.
No, I had a feeling this was not just one. This was hundreds, probably thousands, or God knows how many, because there were many, many, many drawers, and this was huge. This wasn't just a small column. This was very, very big.
Because I had the impression in my own close encounter experience that there was some kind of collection taking place.
Absolutely.
I had the feeling at times, Corina, and it was very disturbing, that maybe one of the things that was happening was that they were collecting us, our souls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have that feeling too?
I have to be honest, there is, yes, it's either our soul or, as he said, our essence, our spirit. There is something definitely that they are collecting, which
something
is not
that
on
is,
the physical level.
Yeah, something that is beyond our understanding.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. There is something there like that. But also there's the physical thing, like on my encounter in December of '85, I had sexual material removed from my body.
Yes.
And has that ever happened to you?
Oh, you bet. Several times. My son, they've visited my son over the years and have done the similar things that they did to him. My daughter, actually, believe it or not, my daughter's pregnant right now, first grandchild on the way.
Oh, wow.
And this poor young lady now has children like me. They've got dark hair and olive complexions, whereas the eldest one was very blonde, is lighter colored, and has blue eyes. And my other two have brown eyes.
Well, that's, what's strange about that is that blue eyes, you can't get blue eyes from a brown-eyed parent.
That's right. That's right.
And he has blue eyes, and he's nearly 7 feet tall.
Yes.
Wow. Well, that, folks, is not an uncommon situation. I could tell you a lot of stories that are very similar in this respect, and we know, of course, a very dear family in Mexico whose daughter, now in her mid-20s, is probably a hybrid, and she's not massive like that. She's in fact very thin and delicate because she is more of connected to the little gray people who are very thin and delicate. But, I think that one of the things that as the world begins to get its mind around the fact they're here and they've been here for years, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to start to face the fact that UFOs are real. The media and the scientists and the politicians and the military. The military already knows it darn well. Then they'll be talking about them flying around, and the one thing they won't talk about is them coming into our bedrooms. But why are they here? They're here for the same reason we would be here if we came from somewhere else. And where they come from, I don't know. They're here for us, because of the intelligent species that is here. And they are doing things to us and with us. They are very involved, very involved. And do you feel, obviously, that they are, given what you said earlier, involved still in your life right now?
Well, when for us, it's gone from generation to generation, and my experiences started, the first ones I remember was probably about 5 years old. And with my children, it began when they were between 5 and 6 as well. So, definitely they've been involved with us for a very long time.
Do you have any sense of why you?
I don't know. I don't know why us. I think my children have asked me that, why us, Mom? Like, is there anything different about us? I mean, we seem to be regular, normal people. And, I don't have an answer for them. I don't know why us.
I don't know why us either. And I ask this question of every